Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts. Today we're going to take a stab at something that happens a lot in this world. I think it happens for people of all ages. I would say less for teeny tiny people like babies and kids. But the second one is supposed to take control over their life. This feeling can be the result of that responsibility fairly quickly. I've seen a ton of it in my days, and I think I will continue to see a ton of it. Doesn't really, after you hit about 15 or so years old, you could be in it for a long time. You could have it happen to you over and over and over. It's frustrating when you're not experiencing it or you haven't experienced it either ever or for a really long time. And it's this feeling of feeling lost, you know? There are times when we as individuals burden ourselves with feeling like we should know where we're going, and then there's definite moments in time, at least in the Western United States, where you're supposed to know where you're going, right? And it's more intense than just, I should take this a degree, or I should do this and that. What I've come to realize is that it actually is multidimensional. I used to think it was just a single person's individual inability to find out where they're going, right? And then through other analyses and meeting people and having pretty good discussions where we're not really talking about being lost, because nobody wants to admit that, but you're clearly sitting across the table from someone who's just completely lost, right? It happens, right? So you do your best to try and orient them and make them feel comfortable. But the added extra thing, and there are most likely, kind of an infinite combination of things that get into this realm, but one of the big ones is you feel like you need to please somebody else. And so you're trying to pick something that will make someone else happy. And that's the kiss of death, because it has nothing to do with you, and you have to live with your choice every single day. Isn't it interesting that just in about, 3 minutes, we've covered enough of this subject to prove to ourselves that we never get this kind of education in schools, right? Where's the class about finding your major in college? Where's the class about what are you interested in doing for a living? How do you want to spend your life? Do you want to be married with kids? Do you want to have a job? Do you want to be sitting at home living off somebody else and no kids? Whatever. If someone wants to support you, hey, it's up to you guys, And then there's the different personalities of people that when they are lost, they're either going to seek help, which is the most intelligent of the entire bunch, right? They're able to come to you and say, man, I have no idea, but I'm supposed to be picking a major in college. I'm supposed to be figuring this out and this out, Maybe they graduate and they're still trying to figure out what's going on. Maybe they got divorced. They don't know what to do. Maybe they've been doing this job forever and the job disappears and they're 35, 45 years old. And they're like, oh my God, I got a wife and kids going into college and I got no money. What do I do? And it just makes you feel lost. Sometimes people get in over their head with drugs and alcohol and what have you, and that makes them lost. They got a good job. They got people who love them. But for whatever reason, the addictions are consuming all their money and all their time and all their loyalty. They're way past. They got a Harvard PhD. Never had a problem in school. Never had a problem getting a job. They're just hooked on something. You could get dumped by somebody. You thought everything was going great. And then out of the fucking nowhere, someone dumps you, right? I think we've all experienced that. I'm going to definitely share some of my gems to help you understand. But now I had a situation where when I was young, I tried a ton of different stuff. Instead of finding out what I didn't like and what I did like, I found out that I pretty much loved everything. And that's a bummer. I loved being academic. I loved being creative. And when I say love, I mean, it's just as, it's like feeling like a hand fitting into a nice glove, and the glove is the universe. And then you pull your hand out and you put it in another glove, and you're like, oh my God, this feels so good, you know? I would read a book and feel my purpose, not necessarily with the content of the book, but with the experience of reading a book. I'd paint a painting. Oh, that's my whole purpose. Write a song. It's like program an application, whatever, right? I didn't have the college major problem because by the time I was 18, I was smart enough to do what I wanted to do professionally. It's just one of those things that happens. It happens to a lot of you too, right? As I got older and met younger and younger people, especially when I really started teaching, I'd say my early 30s, I would find people that, like I said in a previous episode recently, who felt like they were lost. They just need a little bit of encouragement. And what's interesting is I think that you can be lost where you can't ask for help because you're smart enough to understand it is your burden. You have to figure things out for yourself. Now, you can use your friends and your family and life to satiate yourself during the perhaps frustrating phase or terrifying phase or scary phase of not knowing exactly where things are going to go next, right? But the other one you have to remember, I don't want to jump ahead too quickly, but the idea is to manifest the destiny that you're really looking for. To obviously dabble in several things so that you can have some choices in life, right? Like Walt Disney said, it's hard to choose from one. So when you bring, someone would bring him a sketch of like, oh, I think this cartoon character could look like this. They'd only bring him one. He says, that's pretty cool, but it's hard to choose from one. So you need to go draw me like 3 or 4 more. Maybe your next one's better. But now, what leads to a life where you don't get lost as much? And for those of you who've ever experienced it or you're in it now, this is kind of a precursor to what you might do adjusting your future. Because I will say this before I get started, terribly deep in this, understand that you're okay. We're going to find out what it is you need to do. And you're going to be okay. You will. Because no matter what happens, if you lose a job, there's another job out there. If you lose a loved one, or you get dumped, I should say, there will be someone else. And if you've never done something before in your life, you're 18 years old, you're coming up on 18, you're like, oh my God, this college thinks I should know what I should be doing. Yep. You should have maybe played in enough things that you have some ideas of what turns you on. Now, there's a few areas, right? So this introspective lost feeling, which is you may not know who you are anymore, right? I tell this story all the time where I worked from the age of 17, pretty hardcore, up till, I'd say about my early 40s. And I had to shut down my company because of the whole subprime loan scandal had nailed most of my clients. Of the ones that were healthy, we were done. We were done doing the work for them, so we were finished. And again, what it was is I created a company with one of my former employees where we made casual online gaming platforms and the games that run on them. And so, but we did all kinds of weird shit too. I mean, music studios and conference calling robots, and just we got a reputation we can do anything. So we did really well. But then it blew apart for a bunch of different reasons, but the main one being the economy slumping. And so I had to shut it down. I mean, I tried to find gigs. I even found a gig that was potentially keep my doors open in 6 more months, but the gig looked really, I should say, what is how do we say it? It looked very suspicious, like it wasn't going to work out. I had the wrong people in this team. It was an external team trying to use our resources. And I told the CEO, I said, I think this is going to be the end of your company, because I worked with your company for 4 years before you came on board. And she said, yeah, I think you're right. And sure enough, the project was canceled. It never happened. These fossils that were trying to act hip, man, were just taking the company down a really bad stint of trying to drain their last round of venture capital, which is so sad. But anyway, as some of you've heard, I popped out of this phase and I ended up sitting at home, and I was just thinking to myself, I don't know who I am. I mean, I know some of the stuff I've done in the past, and I like a lot of that stuff. Life has been really good to me, so I wasn't feeling like, depressed or anything, but it was just like, Jesus, I just need to go and do nothing. Just let it all settle down, right? It's like when someone kicks up all the dirt in the pond and then you want to see the fish again, you got to hold still, right? So I went to the beach with a little black book with nothing in it and a pen and no shirt. And I just sat there, just eating across the street. I came over, I'd sit down on the steps in Huntington Beach here. Just look at the ocean, look at the people. Something would occur to me, I'd write it down. Probably all of it's been pushed into episodes, so there's no mystery as to what was in the book for you guys. And it took like 3 to 4 months. I just sat there all summer. I think it was 2013, the summer of 2013. And yeah, that's exactly what it was. And by the end of the year, when I popped out of this coma and felt way better, and I didn't really have this feeling for a love of a job necessarily at the end of the game, because I don't think I really lost the will to work in any way, shape, or form. I just was like, what kind of work should I do? By the end of the year, I got a gig and did it for 2 years. Little, like a weird side coding gig. I hadn't coded like exclusively like that for a really long time, right? When I was a kid, in my teens, I did everything. I did everything I could do. I read enough books that being a scientist seemed really cool, going to, get a degree in something. Then I was definitely an artist from birth. I didn't really get into music as much in my teens. Later happened in my 20s. But I got into programming. I got into digital art. So the whole ecosystem to make a video game, that was me. Just figuring out every trick in the book, talking to every one of my, mentors in my hometown. And it was very rewarding. I told my dad when I was 14 that I wanted to be a computer programmer, and he said, "You don't know shit." Now, he was right, but he didn't have any idea that I was actually fully serious about it, right? Wasn't trying to be an asshole. And so I came out, and that's what I did immediately. Now, the interesting thing was when I came out, I was not lost in my career. I was kind of lost in California, but I was like, it's California. Who cares? I didn't grow up with palm trees. Palm trees are great. The weather's awesome. I can go to the ocean anytime I want to. Something that, I'd only seen maybe 2 or 3 times in my life before then. And always on vacations, right? So I didn't care that I was lost. I was like being lost in Disneyland or being lost in the backlot at Universal in the 1950s, New York. It's okay to be lost in some places sometimes. Enjoy it, right? It's really funny. I had a good lunch recently with someone, and they had the guts to say, "I got trust issues," which could mean, trust abandonment, all that kind of stuff. And I said, so do I, and so does the whole world. Everyone's got it. So don't feel weird if you got trust issues. Or you gain what the further classification, which would be abandonment issues, right? And I think that has a lot to do with the feeling of being lost. Now, there's some things where you're being lost because of an individual rejecting you. And then there's, which could be someone cheating on you or whatever, right? They're rejecting you in some metaphorical way. They've chosen someone else, right? And then there's that feeling of being lost that is more related to the universe and not an individual, right? You lost your job. Your economy's crashing around you or something like this. Now, in 2018, as a human being in the United States of America, which means, in being in my late 40s, you dial it all the way back to your 20s and your teens, and because of the ride that America has had, okay, I can't speak for any other country, you're almost guaranteed to have had all of these things happen to you in your lifetime. And it, makes you stronger every single time you hurt your skin, right? You get cut, and the scar tissue is really thick, right? And so you get, when your bones mend from being broken, you get a big old knot on your bones where they came together, and it kind of was confused, and it grows this little knot. Well, that's actually stronger than the rest of the bone. Interesting little metaphor for how things heal. Your heart heals, and you become stronger. First time you get dumped, oh my God, it's the worst feeling in the world. You feel like you're going to die. You feel nauseous and sick, and you can't imagine the person that you were with ever being with somebody else, ever just feeling love for someone else when you're really, really young, right? And then you start to hopefully examine yourself. Now, sometimes you get dumped because in the stage that you're in, and when you were with them, you were an asshole and you need to change. And boy, honestly speaking, if you can figure that out about yourself and make the little change, or make several changes, maybe a couple big ones, you'll realize, when you get older, that those changes were something that was free. You just identified it and you said, I'm not doing this anymore. Boom. And guess what? From that point on, you are fixed permanently, right? How many people were strung out on alcohol, paid massive prices, lost marriages, lost their kids, lost their jobs, lost everything they ever built up, maybe money, homes, whatever, or just happiness. And then one day they just say, enough is enough. I'm not doing this anymore. Boom. And guess what? It was free for them to do that. Now, they paid the price before they made the big ultimate decision, but in the end, the solution was free. And just like the shoes on Dorothy and Wizard of Oz, you could have clicked your heels the whole time. Sooner the better, right? Now, with people, I had a relationship. Last time I had one of those surprise breakups, it was fascinating. It was, dated this person, I guess you could say just about 10 months. It was like not quite the full relationship in the first few months, but by the time it was over, it was heavy duty. And I was invited into this person's life in a very intense way, slept over all the time, hung out all the time. And it was really going somewhere. It really felt like, wow, I'm not a little kid anymore. I'm in my 40s, and I think this could last. This person kept inviting me further and further into the family, further and further into things related to her child. Everything was going great. And then one day I go over, and she's acting really strange. And then with no remorse, okay, there's just a breakup. She just said something to me that meant, we're not going to be together anymore. And I was just like, it was so unbelievably bizarre that I was like, not really that angry. I was just like, really? Oh, okay. It almost feels like this can't last because this is so weird, right? And then, then I go through this really strange, Kubler-Ross thing, for the next couple months. It started to sink in, and then I'm just ultra confused as to what was going on. I moved on with life. But then about 6 months later, almost to the month, right, the person came back and said, I don't know why we broke up. Why did we break up? Like, I don't know. You're the one that did it. And we tried to hang out again, and it was an interesting reason why we decided not to talk again. But it kind of ended nicely. We kind of ended up being really, decent friends with each other. And we text every once in a while back in the days, several years ago. And so, I found myself in a relationship bubble, lost as to what happened. Like, you always ask yourself, what did you do? Right? You let this helicopter do its thing. When I was in high school, though, I had my first high school sweetheart. We broke up. And it was like, the Hollywood thing, the total ton of bricks. Oh my God. It was like Ben Stiller and Something About Mary at the very end when he's just crying, walking down the street. That was me. But I had been a total jerk off. I said this story a couple times. I realized that I was super duper jealous. I was protecting this girl. I was like 15, 16 in there. First girlfriend, really, that was super, super duper serious. And so what I figured out was that it was me. I made the decision to change. And I went from being lost to being found again. And even though I knew I was never going to get back with that girl ever again, I still felt much more confident when I bumped into the next girl, because I'm like, whew, it's important you go out with your friends. You go out with your friends and you hang out. You talk to that guy. It's no big deal, right? If you're going to switch to that dude, I'd rather know now than later, right? So you get in there and you do that, right? The one time I found myself unemployed, and I've said this story a couple times, and where I manifested, okay, I think, it certainly felt like this, but when I was working for the TurboTax folks, and again, it was in there for about 2 years, they laid us off, and they just had tried to expand too quickly. They'd spent too much money at the time. And, I'm here in California from the Midwest, and I don't have, any money. I have what was in the bank, my severance paycheck, which might have been 2 weeks worth of pay. And I'm sitting there, I think at the time, I was renting the garage from a really good family at my church. So I wasn't totally worried about not eating or, whatever. But, these jobs were very coveted. I walked in as the 18th employee of the company that, was creating this thing and eventually became TurboTax. So very, very coveted thing. And I moved up to the company. It was great. And then poof, right out the door with a ton of other people. So I remember 3 of us who were friends went to one of our friends' homes. We went in the back, and it was about April 16th. I can't remember, 1989 I think it was. And we're just sitting outside by a pool, and we're looking at each other like, well, Jesus, what do we do now? Seriously. One of my buddies lived with his parents. The girl that we were hanging out with, I forgot her situation, but she had a lot of local family. She was going to be all right. Well, the next day when we came in to get our stuff, that's when the dude gave me the little tiny, it looked like a fortune cookie ad, or a fortune cookie piece of paper, right? That's how big the ad was. And it said, video game artist, call this phone number. And it was in Oxnard, California. And I'm sitting here in Camarillo, living in Camarillo. Yeah, I was living in Camarillo, working in Camarillo. And so I went and did the interview, and then took home the computer and did my test, and came back and got the job. So within 1 week, I went from having a job, losing a job, feeling absolutely geographically and financially lost. Oh my God, what am I going to do now? Over panicking, of course, because I'm young. And then getting the next job. Okay. So let's talk about pleasing other people. It's not bad to please other people, all right? It's not bad. It's not even bad to make a sacrifice to please other people. That could be a very noble thing. I think it was the actor Steve Carell. If I'm right, that was a situation where his wife, who was very beautiful, is very beautiful. I think she was also an actress, and they wanted to have a family. And if I got the story right, she deliberately stopped auditioning so she could raise their kids. And then he went off and made it. And so then, of course, he's thanked his wife a couple times at ceremonies, which I think is super cool. But she made the ultimate sacrifice for the both of them. And I'm hoping she's very happy with that choice. But sometimes we want to please people that we shouldn't try to please. You know what I'm saying? They will not matter. They're not a lifelong participant in your life, or they shouldn't be burdening you with the need to please them at all. Okay? One of the most common, I think, mistakes that kids make is worrying about what the parents think. I you want your parent, you want to be a good kid, you want to be a good person, and so your parents can say, that's a great kid. I've raised a great human being. And hey, if you're a good human being, there's very little that it will take to get that reward in life, right? That classification. So your parents feel great on their deathbed or whatever, if that's what you want. There's the classic one from the Midwest, and it happens in every sector of the world, but a family has had a business for a really long time. They've worked really hard. It could be a business that's 200 years old or 50 years old, doesn't matter. They worked extremely hard to get customers, a storefront, all their vendors, so they can, keep a profit going on. And they expect you to keep the business going. But maybe you have some aspirations. I've known folks that have taken over the family business and absolutely loved it, and to this day, they are the template of happiness in this world, right? And I know folks that took it over, hated it, and either quit or continued, but they point a lot of anger at their parents for forcing it on them. I know folks that have run off and done much bigger and better things and made themselves extremely happy, and the family eventually said, you know what, we had no idea you were that good at that, so the fact that you totally knocked it out of the park, we're really glad you did. And then there's the fourth one, which is the kid had everything, ditched the family business, went off and never really tried anything, right? Never risked anything. Just said, I don't want to do that. I'll go over here, and they end up completely failing. And they end up coming back to the parents, and they don't want to take over the business, or they try to, and it's already gone because they missed the loop, right? The generation that was supposed to take over gone. Family sold the business to people. They drove it into the ground. They turned it from a hardware store to a barbecue shop to a fucking parking lot. So I've seen all these different scenarios in my lifetime. The saddest one is the kid who didn't really have a dream and went off and just pissed away everything, right? I know when it was like that. Really sad. So now every time I meet a family, I just met one at this restaurant in HB. The parents have built an RV company, and I was sitting next to the mom and the son, and great people. And so she's handing the business to the son. The son's like this totally cool guy. I looked at him and I said, you're very lucky to have a family business that you can take over. I hope you like it, and I hope you take it over, and I hope you blow it up or do whatever you can do. Just have fun with it, right? And he was the ideal son. He was just like, oh, I know. This is great. I love this job. I think he had a brother that was already in it too. So it's just like it was going to be two bros working on it. But anyway, they're taking care of the family business, and they're definitely going to go one more generation. And this kid's like early 20s or whatever, so it's going to go potentially another 50, 60 years. It's awesome. And if you can, I'm just going to digress on this a little bit more, but if you can hang on to it for 50, 60 years, your child doesn't have to take it over. Their child can take it over. You know what I'm saying? But it's always been the mantra of my family that you're sort of just allowed to be whoever you want to be. The only thing that everyone hopes that you'll end up doing is be happy, right? My analogy since I was a kid was, I'm going to take my kids and I'm going to push them up with the palms of my hand and hopefully get them to the next step up there that I can't access from where I am. I'll never see the step that they're at. A step of intelligence, a step of insight, intellectual feelings, all that kind of stuff, right? You want them to be smarter and more clever and all that good stuff. And if I die in the ditch, but they're up there, it's perfect, right? Will have done my deed. But now let's go for the big one. Since we talked about some easy ones, let's go after a giant one. And we've done this before. I think I got an episode called Getting Back Up. Here's my advice, okay? And this is going to be going after your past. If you're currently lost, it's going to be going after your past first, and there's a reason for this. But for those of you who aren't lost right now, even if you've never been lost in your life, I think the secret and the formula to making sure that you never, ever, ever feel like you're lost. And again, this is a deep-rooted inner psychological issue, meaning you and your opinion of yourself, you can be lost. It could be once you've lost this inside and you don't even know it, that other people look at you and they don't know who you are either. You're just weird, and they tend to kind of gravitate away. They don't want to be with you as much because they don't understand you. They don't know how to communicate with you. Maybe you're on a mission and you know that you're going to divorce yourself from reality for a little while as you go off on this, writing a book. Maybe you're Heath Ledger studying to be the Joker, and you just kind of shut your family out because you're going to become this weird guy in a hotel. And then your jealous rival's going to have you murdered. But I think you have to constantly be searching for what could be. Unless you're in those wild scenarios where, like, again, you've got total and utter control. You're selling air and everyone's buying, right? And there's no competition. You got the whole lockdown on the patents. But if you don't have something that surefire, keep looking, especially when you're comfortable. Look at other industries that you might do. A lot of times, one of the best questions I've heard asked of celebrities, because they always get stupid questions, right? What's your inspiration? One of the best questions I've ever heard is, what would you do if you didn't do this? Super famous actor, super famous scientist, whatever, even your neighbor. If you weren't doing this, it's usually more interesting, I think, with celebrities because they have so OD'd on a particular career that to ask that question is like, well, this is my whole life. And it's like, you ask Prince, what would you do if you weren't a musician? And you sit there and you just get on the edge of your seat going, oh, yeah, what the hell would you do, man? I mean, that's a whole dimension of who that person is. Prince was really good at playing basketball, like really good. But he's 5'3". But he was really good. I heard he played in heels, He could whip people's ass out there on the court. It's amazing. So ask yourself the question, while life is healthy, what would you do if you did do what you do now to be completely fulfilled? Now, obviously, sometimes that's a fantasy question with the fantasy answer. And the fantasy answer is, well, this doesn't make any money, but this is what I would do if it did make money. All right, so that's good because it gives you the theme of your life. It gives you what you live for. You live for helping people. You live for whatever it is, right? But you want to find one that is a fallback career. Could be a fallback fantasy career. Now, when you look at something that is amazing in this world, you may not realize that if someone hadn't had a really big idea, the thing that you're looking at wouldn't have occurred. Examples: the Eiffel Tower. If you ever see the thing in real life, it's massive. It's a country block. The four legs are really far apart from each other, okay? It's a massive, amazing structure. Disneyland. Well, of course Disneyland exists. Okay, 1950, none of them existed. By 1955, it was open because Walt Disney had an idea. He got tired of taking his girls to a park where only they got to play on the equipment, and he's just sitting there feeding the pigeons. It's like, I want something where mom and dad and everyone could be involved, and I wanted it to be more than just a carnival. There was plenty of carnivals back in the day. He wanted story and rides to come together, and the rides were actually designed to augment the story. And so the Peter Pan ride, you're actually taking off with Peter Pan on one of those boats. Ingenious. But without the idea and the balls and the courage and all that good stuff, you never try it. So when you're sitting at home and everything is comfortable and cool, and again, there's no crime in keeping the same career to the day you die. You're lucky if you can do that. Teachers have that privilege, which is really cool. It's like I don't really hear of recession in teachers. It's interesting. Hopefully that never happens, that kind of thing. But for those of us in the corporate world or the entrepreneurial world, we have to continue asking these questions, I think, right? And before we dive into the other side, let me get you prepped in another way. One of the most, I think, heartbreaking moments that you can have if you feel lost for even a split second, it could be almost like you live a whole life in a split second in your mind, is you're single, living by yourself, and everything goes tits up. At that point, you get to, I don't know, depending on your constitution, depending on the confidence you have in yourself, depending on your experience before you actually had this ever happen to you, you may just go, whatever, I got to find a job. Jesus, let's just file for unemployment. If that's not enough, well, then I'll get a roommate or I'll beg and borrow a few bucks from friends. But I'm going to go out and be really aggressive. I'm going to knock on every single door, and I'll be back on my feet. Don't even worry about it, right? And that's the kind of attitude you need. It's constructive. It's not unrealistic. But you have some freedoms when you're completely by yourself, whether you not know it or not, right? Especially the younger that you are, You may need to move to a different place in the world. You may find out that just moving from where you are to another area, like let's just say, I'm going to give you an easy kind of low-hanging fruit example, which is the following. You're in Seattle. Yeah, I've never been. A lot of family lives up there somehow. And so it's kind of dark and rainy, even, in the good times. It gets cold just like every other place in wintertime. And maybe that just kind of sours your viewpoint on the world. Maybe. Some people love it, and that's why they live there, right? Because when it's green, it's green. It's beautiful, right? I've definitely been to Portland, Oregon. But maybe you need to go to the desert of Arizona, New Mexico. Maybe you need a more tropical setting. So you go to La Jolla and San Diego, you go to Hawaii. You find a job in those areas. You never know until you look, right? Maybe you want a big giant city like New York City. Maybe you want the party life of Miami. Maybe you want the rural area of like some Amish place in Wyoming or somewhere, Utah. Maybe the whole change of venue is what you need. Maybe your skill sets are better employed in different areas. So there's only one job in your area that's available per year for what you do, and you just need to get to a different area so that those opportunities open up. Maybe there's a skill set in those other areas that you've never seen, but when you see it, it's going to be like getting bit by some mutant virus. It's going to make you so happy, man. This is going to sound stupid, but I've debated making an episode called Being Cool. I think I may have said that back in season 1. And because there's a science to it. There's a super science to it. I tried to study those around me who were super cool. And I've got a couple stories in season 1. Being lost, but being cool can go together really, really well. What am I talking about? Well, when you have something happen to you that is very differential from where you were, meaning today was completely different than all the days that were seen to be pretty much the same, right? You get fired, you have a car accident, you get some weird news, you just wake up and feel funny. Again, something different is occurring today. You're probably becoming more enlightened by either force, by something happening to you, or your own realization that you're like, oh my God, But what is being cool? Everyone's supposed to be it, I guess, right? The idea is you have perspective on what you care about. You see people that are, there's some people that are just numb and they get mistaken for cool. They just don't have any emotions at all. But there are folks that know exactly what's going on. They're very cognitive of their world. They know the expect the unexpected is sort of a good mantra to life. And instead of living in a state of tension and panic because something could happen that they wouldn't expect, They've run all the scenarios out in their brain for the category of this unexpected thing that could occur, and so they relax. One of the things I'm notorious for, personally, is driving my car, Los Angeles or any packed area, and I have like this, again, pictorial memory, this photographic memory. I turn it on when I need it, and I don't use it when I don't need it. So it's one of these things. But I take full inventory of all the cars around me, their velocities, who's in the car, whether or not they're a punk, boy who's going to be trying to prove something to someone that doesn't exist, or, some old person is just really just hanging on for dear life. Whether I think there's someone who's a foreigner who's fresh off the boat, who's struggling with the whole notion of steering a big giant piece of steel, or some really good responsible drivers. Big rigs versus SUVs versus some car with a shitty tire that's all bent, When you get done taking inventory, then you can relax. Check your mirrors. Someone coming up on you fast, because it can happen, the unexpected. The oncoming traffic. How protected are you from that shit, Because you're never going to be able to take inventory of that stuff. It's coming at you constantly, right? But I've had cars change lanes in front of me a million times, big rigs, all this other stuff, and the passengers in my car, now I'm just driving a straight line, I'm not acting crazy, but the passengers jump. They jump hardcore. It's happened dozens and dozens of times. Well, I'm just sitting there being really relaxed, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, if I hadn't gotten out of the way, this big rig would have probably bumped into the car, and then who the hell knows what would have happened, right? With that analogy, you can apply to almost every category of your life. Expect the unexpected. You don't have to manifest it. That's the key. You don't sit around just panicking. Oh, she's going to leave me. He's going to leave me. What else? I'm going to get fired. My kid's going to hate me, or whatever. Those cliche things that happen in life to potentially other people, not you. Who are the people they interview on the news that panic a lot during natural disasters? They only talk to the people who have the ability to say passionately, you never thought it would happen to you. Well, how much more calm and productive are you if you do think it could happen to you? We had a lot of homes burned down recently in California. Absolutely horrific, tragic, and very suspicious. A bunch of people said they couldn't believe it would happen to them. Now, for some folks, they're living in Malibu. There's not a lot of vegetation around them in general. It's kind of a more deserty mountaintop with tiny little bushes and stuff. They still burn very quickly. But then you have people way up in paradise who are living in dense forest, right? But now forest fires are pretty rare, right? And the kind of forest fires that happened up there are proven to be extremely rare, right? But now some folks, and I can't say I would have been one of these folks, but they thought it through. They thought about fire, And I'm sure there's plenty of people that thought about fire that weren't able to stop the disaster from hitting them. So God bless them. Let's hope they recover. Let's hope they rebuild. So there's not a big railway going through their backyard where their house used to be. But they get everything away from their house that's flammable. They spray their house down. They do whatever they can do. They end up saving other people's homes because they save their own. Either the firefighters can go on to the next house because theirs is okay, or, they stop the flames from moving down the street. A buddy of mine, who we're going to do an episode together by his house, my former host from MKLG Radio, his house survived because the neighbor's house got saved, and that prevented the fire from hitting him. In his area, 36 homes burned down. Just a handful didn't, and his house was fortunate enough to be in that stack. Let's say you're on the other side of this game. You are sitting in what you feel to be the most empty room that you've ever been in. And that could be a literal statement, or that could be a metaphor as to how you feel inside your chest, your soul. What I always tell people is, time always makes things better. It's crazy. That's not exactly what you want to hear. But the other thing that you don't want to hear is that this is going to last forever. It's kind of like when you're drunk. When you're drunk, you're like, oh my God, I accidentally drank too damn much. And you want it away from you and off of you as quickly as possible, but you can't do it, can you? Right? You get your soda water and your lime and you're pounding maybe some coffee, but no matter how quickly you try to get this thing off of you, it's just going to take time. Now, what's cool about that, I mean, it's not cool to be drunk, but whatever. I'm not judging you, but for me personally, I hate it. Usually, even in the drunkest state that you can possibly be in, you know it's gonna be gone tomorrow. Now you know you might have a big ass hangover, but it's gonna go away. Well, being lost, feeling lost, has the same assurance. You will find yourself. You absolutely will. The biggest fear is resetting. Usually, when you're in that state, maybe like, hey, I've been doing this job for 20 years, 30 years. It's coming to an end. Whatever you were doing is being replaced by robots, or there's some other easy way to do it, you know. And so you know you're going to have this period between your money coming in now and whatever is going to be next. You will find that people are available to help you sometimes. Friends. Let's say you don't have any friends, though. Let's say you're new to this area in general, wherever the hell you are. Your family, and they don't have money to help you, right? The fear is losing maybe some stuff you have. But I tell you what, there's something called the mother of invention, and it is awesome. And the crazy thing about mother of invention, which probably none of us want to admit, is that it's probably good to feel it every once in a while, even if you don't have to feel it. The extreme example of that would be you change careers on purpose. You quit your job on purpose. No one does this, and I'm not recommending you do. But sometimes it's that risk of going out there and going, you know what? I used to be this, but now I'm this, right? How many actors and singers and whatever people that we both mutually know, which is why I gravitate to that pyramid of people up there. But you hear that, oh, they were a landscaper before, they were a doctor, they became an actor, comedic actor. What you don't want to do when you feel lost is to do nothing. Now, what am I talking about? Didn't I just say I went to the beach and did nothing? Well, it's kind of an exaggeration. My body didn't move that much on the beach. I was sitting on this concrete steps, looking at the beach. My mind was going, though. My mind was moving. And it became sort of one of these unscripted improv plays. Well, I know I need to do something. I need to do something for a living. I need to find out, what do I care about anymore in this world? Do I care about the same things I used to care about? I think the answer came back, yeah, absolutely. You like doing these things, right? I came home and started building a product, which I'm still building to this day. I'm taking a big 5-year hiatus on it, but I'm going to be getting back into it. But here's what happened. The product I started building, I built some technology that goes underneath it, a platform. And then when I got this job, basically an old employee of mine called me and said, hey, can you know any guys that do this? And I said, well, I do that. So why don't you exhaust me first, and then we'll see if we need any other people. And I went and did this interview, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a one-man job if there ever was one. And so I was able to take the technology I just recently wrote and brought it to this company and did a job. It turned it into 3 jobs. It was really cool. They were very satisfied. It was very neat. I'm in a project right now where I'm still working in that using my old technology. But now how did that all come about? I lost my video game company to the economy. My poor last client, lost his company due to the economy. Just couldn't get any more investors. Kind of sucked, right? Probably the best thing you can do is tell yourself everything's going to be okay. You need to hear yourself say it. Genuinely. Go in the bathroom by yourself. Maybe even look yourself in the mirror. If you have a bunch of people around you and you feel uncomfortable with that, get in your car, go somewhere. Tell yourself. Talk to yourself. Talk to yourself as the sort of positive mentor that you wish you had at that point. But be logical. Use the stuff that you've learned in your life and pretend as if there's a passenger in the passenger seat who's actually going through this and not you. And you look at them and you're like, well, geez, you're really smart, right? You love life. You're cool. Obviously, every time we hear one of our friends losing their jobs, getting laid off, none of us have any fears that it's going to be difficult to get a new job. We always think that someone's going to get a new job. And guess what? 99 times out of 100, carry the 9, they always do. All right. Well, now it's your turn. It's your turn to go through that weird phase. I've heard friends of mine buying brand new cars, very expensive vehicles. They're kind of upside down in the car, and there's an accident, and it's their fault. Just one of those things that happens. Well, they got a car, it's totaled. They totaled the other car. Thankfully, everyone's okay. Insurance rates are going to go up. Maybe with that insurance hike and all this payoff and all the deductibles, you're not going to be able to afford that, really fancy car anymore. But every time you hear it about someone else, it's okay. You believe they're going to recover. You just feel the empathy for their situation. Someone gets divorced. You feel the empathy. Oh, man, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry about that. And then in your mind, there's plenty of fish in the sea. But you don't know exactly how they feel about that other person. Maybe they're glad maybe they're the one choosing to be divorced, but still they're going to go through all these different angsty moments. A lot of times people get divorced and they feel like they have to. They don't want to, but they feel like they have to. And they're angry that they feel like they have to. They want to be with that other person. It used to be different between the two of them, and now it's changed. And they're like, God damn it, why can't you just be like you were when I first met you? Or maybe you've changed and you have been enlightened so much that you no longer have that big compatibility with the other person. I've had to talk people through a lot of different things in my lifetime. Tragedies of all kinds, small, big, medium, whatever. And usually when I get to a point where we've kind of addressed the immediate panic and they're willing to listen to me be a little, metaphysical, I'll say that line. Well, just imagine the roles are reversed. I'm calling you instead of you calling me, and I'm telling you everything that just happened to me. Would you believe that I would be okay in the end? And every time, it's a rhetorical question. Everybody goes, yeah, of course. Okay, that's you now. You need to advise yourself that you're going to be okay. Let me ask you this. You're born in a great area, great parents, great neighbors. You marry the boy or girl just down the street with a great everything as well. And you have all the kids you ever wanted, all the possessions you ever wanted. As new things are invented, you got it. You have one job your entire life and you love it. And you live all the way to the very end. However, whatever age you want to be when you pass away, that is exactly when your body's going to give out, naturally. Sounds pretty awesome, doesn't it? Sounds pretty awesome. Why does that sound awesome? Because it's not your life. That's the grass is greener, Hollywood, Truman Show life. That's not the real world that we live in. It's the Wellsville life, right? We live in the real world where things are dynamic. Things change. Culture changes. Culture programs people to want things that they shouldn't want. And you're the victim sometimes of people changing their minds and chasing commercials on TV. Chasing fads, right? I think in the end, okay, and there's a funny, let me give you a funny analogy. For any of you who've seen the movie Tombstone with Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer, among other, Bill Paxton and a bunch of other amazing actors, the gentleman that was the ultimate cowboy and the Big Lebowski at the bar, how do I say this? For those of you who haven't seen it, let me just say this much. One of them passes away at the end of, put it this way, not of a gun wound. And he's had a really scrappy ass life. And at the end, he dies technically alone in the room. It's one of those situations where you can only visit so much, and then maybe when no one's visiting, you're by yourself when you pass, right? But you look at those lives and you think, Jesus, at the end of this character's life, they lived 4 or 5 different lifetimes than the average person who had that Truman Show life. There's nothing wrong with the Truman Show life. If you can pull that off, then if Shirley MacLaine's little New Age world thing that we just talked about was true, then you picked level 1 in difficulty. And there's no problem with that. That's what you picked. Or that's what you drew out of the deck of cards of life. So if you're struggling, then you might be more like that character in Tombstone. Yeah, you've got battle wounds and scars on your soul, scars on your heart, scars on your skin. Maybe you're missing an eye and you have an eye patch. You have a peg leg. Who knows, right? Pirates don't wear patches on their eyes because they lost their eyes. Can you live an absolutely extraordinary life without going through obstacles? I don't know. I have never met anyone that hasn't gone through some serious ups and downs. I got friends in Los Angeles who are legendary people. Absolutely beloved. In some circles, they're household names. And I know them very personally, and I know that they have had hardships that some of my friends could never endure. Or at least they would shock me if they could. Right? At least they couldn't deal with them as late in life as it is now, having lived a wonderful life up to that point, because it's just such a tragic difference in direction. But because my friends have had so many little ones, when they have a big one, they deal with it, and they're okay. How many times have you seen a sporting event, like maybe rugby especially, or hockey? Hockey might even be more intense, but I'm not quite sure. I haven't seen a lot of aftermath of rugby, but watching them play, I'm assuming it's pretty brutal. But a lot of hockey players have their teeth knocked out. It's just what happens. And they all kind of know. And the chicks that date these guys, well, they know that they're going to be wearing dentures, or when they take them out at night, they're just going to be whistling when they talk. But it's the game that they decided to play. It's all these bumps and scrapes and blown out knees and all these things are what these guys chose for their life. Well, are they dumb? Did they not know they could have chosen some other more, desk jobby career and saved all their faculties, their bodily functions? Sure, they know that. But they love hockey. They love rugby. They love the game, whatever it is. Football, American football, right? Maybe you're on a higher level of difficulty, which means your rewards are way beyond the lower level. Maybe I'm just being subjective and stupid. I don't think so. Like I've always said on this show, I'll go back to my hometown and there's folks that stayed there the whole time. And they lived very wonderful, rewarding Truman Show lives. Did they have their bumps and scrapes? Absolutely, of course. Some people get divorced. Some people marry each other's spouses, and it gets all kinds of crazy. But overall, it's a little more relaxed than it is out here at the West Coast, right? The Wild Wild West, as they say. As Kool Moe Dee said. Have you ever gotten pulled over and gotten a ticket for speeding, and you think to yourself, well, I was due? It's not really that you're due. It just happened. But like personally, I haven't had a speeding ticket in 20 years. I've had a fix-it ticket for forgetting to put the sticker on my plate. But that's about it. When you find yourself lost and you've never been there before, or you haven't been in this particular level, so you're a little in shock, right? It's like it's new. It's like, Jesus, what did I do? What did I do to deserve this? Why does this always happen to me? There's some of those phrases you do not want to be saying to yourself. Everybody says it, including yours truly from time to time. Understand you just need to be cool. Realize, all right, it's my turn to go through this, right? You're going through it, and maybe the universe is sparing someone else because you're going to take the ticket this time. I want you to smile, take a deep breath, and go, all right, and crack your fingers if that's what you do, and say, I know I'm a badass. I'll figure this out. I will. And hey, maybe a week from now I'm still as lost as I am today. But the difference is that I know that I'm in this state, and I'm going to be searching quickly, rapidly. I'm going to spend 12 hours a day finding this new thing. Maybe changing my geographical location. Maybe you got to change your geographical location simply because the person that might have dumped you and put you in this state of being lost, they're in that location, and you just got to get away. You got to go into public. Maybe you should eat at a particular restaurant every single day for a couple months. Meet everybody there so they totally trust you, and you walk in and they say, Norm, and they have the beer ready for you when you get to the bar. Or whatever metaphorical product you're buying there. Have faith in yourself. When I say manifest your destiny, I really mean it. I'm going to give you an example of where I manifested my fears manifested a situation, and it's happened to me tons of times. It just happened to a friend of mine. 23, I wrote a program that I sold to Fortune 1000 companies that do database programming, and it was a product that unified their interfaces. So you have like 200 coders. It made it all perfectly aligned and made it graphically look perfect. Okay. All right. So I started selling this product. And when it took off, I got a big bunch of orders in. Well, I wrote the manual. I wrote the software. It's back in the days when we would ship you a floppy disk. A 3 1/4. 3 1/4, 3 1/2, whatever it was. Those little hard ones from the Macintosh. And I came home with this order, and I needed to get it to FedEx before they closed. So what I needed to do is print out a manual, which I think was about 88 pages. I needed to dupe the disk. So I already had the disk duped. But what did I fear? I feared that my printer would have a problem. It's a laser writer printer, black and white. I start the print job. You can't find my printer. It's a Mac. I've never had any problems at all ever printing. Ever. Okay? And it won't print. It won't find the printer. It's not printing and messing up. It just won't find it. What the hell? So I was unable to get the FedEx out the door. I shipped the disk and said, I'm going to get you the manual very soon after this, right? By the time I got home and the fear of screwing up was gone, my printer worked. Well, what do you think happened? I manifested whatever the hell was wrong with that printer because nothing changed. I didn't reboot my computer. I didn't reboot the printer any more than I did when it wouldn't work. I've had clients of mine that tell me that they have a horrible relationship with machines, just like the gentleman in the Twilight Zone. And it won't work until I show up. And then my confidence makes them feel better because I'll sit there and go, well, we shouldn't have any problem with this. Let me try it. Poof, it works. And they're just like, Jesus, I just need you here to make it work because I was making the machine work, right? There's a bunch of, go read the book, Holographic Universe. There's the whole first third of the book is all about the science around human beings changing things with their minds. I know that sounds crazy. Another friend of mine, same situation. She needed to print something for one of her clients. Called me up. Oh my God, this won't work. And I just talked her through it. Boom, it worked. One of them was a friend of mine called me and her keyboard USB port was screwed up. We knew it was screwed up. She rebooted her computer because it hung. And she couldn't get her keyboard to work. So she's calling me going, how did we get this thing to work the other day? And I said, remember, you fixed it the other day. I did? Yeah. What did I do? I said, you did this, this, and this. I explained the movement that she made. She goes, I've done that. I've done that a ton of times before I called you. I'm not stupid. I said, well, please just do it again with me on the phone. Oh my God, it's working. I recreated the scenario where it worked in her mind. And so she manifested the success, and it worked. The more that you recover from these bad moments, the more you have proof that you can recover. You get your heart broken the first time, feels devastating, and you're never going to recover, and you're never going to be loved by anyone else anymore. And then you get the second girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. It happens again, but you're okay. You're a little bit more okay. And hopefully you don't have a bunch of those. But over and over and over, it gets easier and easier and easier, and you pick yourself up, and you start to figure out why things are going bad, and you change your behavior, or you change the people that you hang out with. You don't fear that your printer's not going to print, or your keyboard's not going to work. It just does. I hope you feel me. I'm losing my light here, so I should probably blow out. I got my sunglasses on, so I have to kind of go, how bad is it? The preview monitor in my camera is way better than the camera itself in terms of picking up light. So as long as it's recording what I'm looking at, we're going to be fine. But anyway, I wanted to just do another episode like this because every once in a while stuff happens. I just want you guys to have someone else talking in your ear, letting you know it's going to be okay, because it will be okay. It always is okay. The only thing that makes it stop being okay is if you're no longer on this planet. Then you can't affect any change, right? If you're totally by yourself and you're feeling just absolutely wasted by whatever just took place, again, think about some big changes, because we seldom make any big changes. Our lives are made out of millions of little tiny microscopic changes. Those are the most important ones that you make, not the big ones. You barely make any big ones. How many times do you get married? A few times, maybe once. How many times do you choose to do gigantic moves across the world? Probably only a couple times, right? If you do. Ever. Anyway, hopefully this was helpful. We'll do a short bumper today. If you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. There's audio, video, in case you want to switch formats, a locked Facebook group, a Patreon page, and that's it. There's a shop too, but whatever. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.